Okay, bore da pawb a chroeso. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this multi-location meeting of the Environment, Regeneration and Street Scene Services Scrutiny Committee on the 6th of May 2025. I'm Councillor Sean Percy. I'll be chairing the meeting this morning. As usual, could everyone please ensure their phones are switched to silent during the meeting? And if you wish to speak, please raise your hand in the chamber or your electronic hands on Teams. Likewise, for those on Teams, if you can make sure your cameras are on so you can be seen and heard while participating in council business, please, members. For the purposes of declarations this morning, I just want to confirm we're scrutinising items 4A, 9A and 9B on the agenda. So I'll now move on to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Members, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Gareth Rice. Ti mute, Gareth, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, trustee of the Friends Jersey Park.
Okay, thanks, Gareth.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. As we discussed in pre-brief, that's absolutely fine. So you're able to speak and vote. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other declarations in the meeting today? Okay. So I will move on now to agenda item 3, which is minutes of the previous meetings. There are a lot of minutes on today's agenda. So they're on pages 5 to 90 of the agenda pack. There weren't any concerns raised in pre-brief, so I'm hoping there'll be none today. Could I have a proposal and a seconder for that these are an accurate record of the meetings, please?
I'll propose, Sean.
I'll second then.
Okay, it's proposed by Councillor Bob Wilford and seconded by Councillor Rob Wood. Thank you. That's brilliant. And if you don't indicate to the contrary, I'll take it that these minutes are approved.
I see no indications of the contrary, Chair. Therefore, those minutes are approved as accurate.
Fantastic. I think as well, Tom, there's some outstanding minutes still, isn't there? Yeah. I'm not quite sure how they're going to be dealt with because this is the last Environment Committee meeting. But I'll just
that's right, Chair. There are a couple outstanding. Obviously, this one today will have to be minuted and done as well. Part of the delay is the fact that we have to send them off to be translated, and I can't publish them until we have both English and Welsh together. So what I'll probably have to do is, based on what was in the meeting, work out which one it would be more appropriate to go to in terms of the two new scrutiny meetings, and then we'll do it there. Or possibly if it falls under yourself, maybe because you were the chair of that meeting, it might be more appropriate that it falls under that. But I'll speak with colleagues on that one. But they will be coming and they will have to be approved.
Okay, thank you. Yes, just one of the quirks, isn't it, of changing the committees that we'll have to deal with. Okay, so I'll move on now to our first item of business, really, which is item 4A, changes in access approach to parks and gardens. That's on pages 91 to 154 of our agenda pack. Before I go to questions, do officers wish to add anything? James?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to give a brief overview, just to say that we're bringing this report back following the report we brought at the back end of 2024 to commence with the official trial period for 4 months. So this report is just bringing back the feedback we've had over that trial period from stakeholders and staff and members of the Community Safety Partnership meetings that we've been to on 2 occasions at the start and end of the trial, and just ask to look to progress this now through to a full consultation process for which we'd like to undertake for about a 6 to 8 week period, starting probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks' time.
Okay, brilliant. And just before I go to questions from members, I suppose just want to thank officers and cabinet members for taking on board the feedback from scrutiny last time. I know members were quite keen on there being a consultation process, and I know there was talk of maybe sort of squeezing that into the trial. This seems like a better option, actually. Now we've concluded it to sort of embark on a proper consultation, so I'm sure members welcome that feedback being taken on board. I'm now going to go to questions from members, and my first one from pre-briefing is from Councillor Tim Bowen. Tim?
Yes, thank you, Chair. James, it's a question, it is, basically. Is the damage in these parks one is the mount in Kimla. Is the damage going to outweigh what the savings going to be and just locking these parks? And, you know, if we have parks that are being damaged, are we just going to be locking these ones?
Thanks, Councillor Bowen. So I think it's probably key to point out now that this initiative wasn't brought forward as a cost-saving initiative in the first instance. We identified I think the circa £5,000 saving that it would make associated with the Rangers' hours changing within the financial impacts section of the report, just because obviously that's factual. But it wasn't brought forward for that purpose. It was brought forward because the lock-in operations that were being undertaken were often unsuccessful because of the own working nature of the role. And the difficulty sometimes when encountering people who are still in these parks overnight. So that's what started us thinking about bringing this forward. And actually, we were getting a lot of feedback that we weren't gaining anything from locking those parks. And I think that's what came out of the last scrutiny meeting we had, November, December time last year. So for us going forward, the way we want to deal with this, across the majority of our parks would be if we do have any issues, is we'd look at measures to try and mitigate them going forward in the first instance, rather than necessarily reverting back to locking gates, because that's a resource that we've identified in the past just to do that task, where we'd like to actually utilise that resource on within hours of the majority of our staff working, to utilise them to improve what we're doing with playgrounds, associated with maintenance and inspections. So that was why the initiative was originally brought forward, and I think that's not to focus on any financial saving associated with this, because no doubt if there are issues that we need to deal with, including putting additional measures in, whether it's bollards like we've done already, then that they could be quickly wiped out. But it's not being brought forward as a cost saving initiative.
Okay, lovely, thanks, James.
Okay, thanks, Tim. My next indication was Councillor Gareth Rice. I know you've got several questions, Gareth. I'm happy for you to group those together however you wish. Okay.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Ron. As Councillor Bowen just mentioned, one was around the cost saving 5k per annum, and I was going to say that one incident of antisocial behaviour or vandalism in any park, you would lose that 5k plus more, and is that true value for money? But you just covered on that one. What I will ask around that is the mobile rangers being reassigned to play areas and inspecting play areas. Is that a reduction in establishment? And should there be a need or a decision where vandalism is an issue? If you've lost that mobile rangers establishment position, would we have any other options of personnel to lock them gates going forward? So that's the first one, please.
Thanks, Councillor Rice. So there is no reduction. It's just looking to utilise that resource in a different way, where we think we'd get more value for money from what we do in associated with playground inspections and maintenance. The mobile ranger isn't on call to deal with vandalism or anything at the moment anyway, so that's not something that's going to change as a result of if this is taken forward as a permanent decision following the consultation. So there's no change there. We've got obviously our supervisors which look after our different zones and across the geography of the borough, and that's the way they're dealt with now and will be going forward. And we've got obviously then an on-call rota to deal with anything that's over and above, and then that's sort of safety defined, so it needs to be addressed over the weekends in the evenings as well.
Right. Okay. So we still have somebody available should we need to lock parks and things in the future then?
I think in terms of someone to come and lock the parks, I think what we'd need to do is we need to understand why is that needed going forward, because as we've done this trial period now of just over 4 months, I suppose it's worth pointing out here, it is included in the report, over 50% of the correspondence that we have had back during this trial period has been about Victoria Gardens. Now, officers are sort of minded that there has been an impact in Victoria Gardens. The police have identified that there was an impact previously when gates weren't locked in Victoria Gardens. And Victoria Gardens is a different situation to a lot of our other parks. It is manned during the day, like 2 or 3 others. However, because obviously the work that goes on there in the evenings with the town centre, because of its proximity to the town centre and over the weekends, logistically for us, we've got people there, doing the hours of time which we would cause them now. So there's no impact there. So for that, we would anticipate doing a consultation period that we probably would end up coming back at a recommendation. Not trying to prejudge what will come back, but maybe Victoria Gardens doesn't get included going forward. But for our other parks, there isn't any availability, on demand for someone to go and lock the parks. But what we'll do is, if there are issues that are arising, we'll look at other measures we can implement. And if for whatever reason they aren't successful, then we'd have to revert back to actually locking the gates.
Okay, that's that one. That also touches on my other point. Excuse me. While the trial has been going on, for the last 4 months, it has been during winter hours. So to get a true picture of and build up any sort of evidence-based data, I think although it was open during last summer due to sickness, it wasn't sort of public knowledge that these gates were left open. Now that the public know the gates are left open, it may increase sort of any sort of unwarranted behaviour in these parks. And maybe that's why you're getting it in Victoria Gardens, because it's right in the middle of town and everyone can see it's open. So you're not going to wait to see if it is open or not. So that may have an impact there. I would like to see personally, but an extent before any major changes are made, to keep that trial throughout the summer and see if there are any increases in antisocial behaviour or anything else in these parks, if that's possible. The other thing I had was just a few points of observations in the appendices. You mentioned Bryn Hyfryd Recreation Ground a number of times. As I mentioned, that no one's heard of it being called Bryn Hyfryd Recreation Ground. It's just known as James's Field. And the other point is it's in there. I don't even know why it's part of this, because you can't lock it anyway. There is no lockable access to that park, so it shouldn't really affect that park. And the last thing I had was the addresses for around Jersey Park for consultation. To widen the addresses, there's a number of properties directly opposite the Ennis Mardy entrance to Jersey Park, which I know they've come there a couple of times, and they literally face directly opposite it. So I'd like to have them included, which is on Cwrt yr Ysgol. And there's the other gate up at the incline. The addresses around that area haven't been included in the area for these consultation letters. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rice. I'll try and take them and probably in reverse order. Because you gave me the notes. So, in terms of the addresses, I think it's explained in the report, obviously, the process that we went in terms of identifying, how far we go to actually hand deliver, some correspondence on this. So I think the first thing to obviously just establish is it's not people who receive the hand delivered correspondence don't get anything different to what people typically get from just scanning the QR code. But I am conscious that some will prefer to have something in terms of direction, put it through their door. So I think the thing for that is if there are addresses which you do think that certainly should be included, then I'm happy for you to say today, for you to work with, obviously, I think Laura and Corette are both on the call, to work with both of them, to identify if there are any missing, and we can include those within that list that you want us to post hand deliver them out to. So cover that one. So the Bryn Hyfryd Recreation Ground, or James's Field, I know it's James's Field as well. And you're right, and it's not been locked. It was included just as one. We included all our parks on there. I think there's two things we could do. We can either take it out, or we can include James's Field as a second name for it, within the report, or more importantly within the consultation. But like I said, it's probably no need for it to be in the consultation because we can't lock it anyway. So that's fine. So we remove that. And the winter hours and around the summer months. Officers' feelings were, and through the public safety community partnership meeting, was that because we had that unofficial trial period, for a significant period of time throughout the whole of our summer because of sickness, is that we've already tested that. And I appreciate what you're saying in terms of, it's not publicised during that time period because obviously it was due to sickness and it was just staffing difficulties that we had in terms of resourcing that. But we haven't necessarily I know it's obviously publicised through these meetings, but we haven't necessarily publicised that the parks within were going to be left open during that the last 4-month period either. So we could extend the trial period again. The thing for me is, I think if we go out for consultation and we identify it, I think that our hope as officers is that we'd get, especially if it's over a 6 to 8 week period, we'd get enough feedback for us to be able to bring forward a real considered report, with recommendations post that consultation period.
Yeah, okay. Although you say it's not publicised other than these reports, certainly in Britain Ferry, people know that the gates have been open. It's a small town and word gets round. But yeah, thanks for your response. Thank you.
Okay, thanks Gareth, and thanks James for running through those. Just a couple of quick points from me before you go to other members. Just in relation to Victoria Gardens, because I was wondering this when I read the report, how we were going to resource maybe just lock in that one. Can you just explain what staff and resource we'd use to do that?
Yeah, of course, thanks, Chair. So within Victoria Gardens, it's like Rivian Park and like Talbot Park, it's manned, and Jersey Park. So there's staff there doing the working day, like those other parks. But then where Victoria Gardens is different is we've got staff there then into the evening, and early in the morning because of the town centre activities that we got going on and its proximity to there. So they utilise that as a base, and that's the same then over the weekend period as well.
Okay, that's just like the cleansing staff for the town centre.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand now. That's great. And I think the other point was just in relation to the consultation and the timing. I suppose, if it starts, let's say 2 weeks' time and runs for 8 weeks, then it's going to run through the summer, which would probably be useful. If it started very quickly and ended in 6 weeks, maybe that would be less advantageous in terms of capturing that summer experience. So we might be able to, just by nature of the length of the consultation, that would take us from mid-May to, mid-July, wouldn't it? Which I think would probably capture a good chunk of the summer there.
Yeah, I think Laura's on the call. I think it's probably going to be looking to start in about 4 weeks' time, which would give us even 2 weeks further. Correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but I think that's the plan. There's a couple of things we need to still work with corporate comms on before we put it out. So I think we're talking about a 4 week period.
There we are, Brill. I'm going to bring in Councillor Bob Woolford next. Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I know I didn't have any questions from the pre-brief because I haven't got any parks that would be in the consultation. However, between then and now, I've just done a bit of research on myself, talking to the staff at Towie Terrace, who I deal with quite a lot. And I just wanted to make sure that with James, that when these consultations go ahead, that the views of our staff are also collated and taken into consideration, because the feel I got from everyone I spoke to that this is an extremely difficult task to close a park. They get a lot of abuse, they get a lot of antisocial behaviour, and I even found out that they actually get a lot of barriers put up by proper societies that are using the parks. For instance, the Bowls Club in St George's Park. I spoke to one of the workers who was still there at nearly 11 o'clock at night one night because they'd been playing bowls and they were refused to leave. They wanted to finish their bowls thing. So just what I wanted to say to James was, when these consultations are done, firstly, are the staff's kind of comments obviously collated and taken into consideration as well? And then in that sense, are we looking at any different processes that we could use to protect our staff a little bit more if they do have to lock a park?
Thanks, Councillor Woolford. So in terms of the consultation of the staff, we've spoken with all staff who were impacted by it during the trial period, and they will be included again during the consultation period, the same as the stakeholder groups that we've spoken to and engaged with prior to the commencement of the trial period. So that's where it's sort of come about, this initiative, is that while speaking to staff, what they were saying is that it's not a very nice task to undertake. All those difficulties you explained and many more are things that they face on a daily and if not weekly basis. And it sort of, when we looked at it, we weren't gaining anything from doing. No, we didn't feel we were gaining anything from locking the gates either. So that's why we've done the trial period. That's what came out of the unofficial trial period of in the first instance, which was the back end of last summer. And that's what we feel going forward. Now, from this trial period that we've undertaken for 4 months, that is, I suppose, take Victoria Gardens out of it, because that's where the majority of the engagement came back off. Then across the board, really speaking, other than one or two, isolated issues, that has sort of been the case, and that's been proven to be the point. So that's where the initiative stemmed from, is the difficulties associated with delivering that operation by our own staff. Against what benefit do we get from actually locking the gates?
Yeah,
okay, Bob?
Thanks, James. Yeah, just to concur with that, one of the members of staff I spoke to said that he regularly locked the gates of the park and walked away and watched the kids throw their bikes over the fence and jump back in. Because if we're going to lock these parks, we've got to make sure the rest of the park's secure as well. And if it's not secured, it's pointless locking the gates, really, because if they want to get in there, especially the type of people that will cause damage, they will get in if they've got an access.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I think a few of us expressed that sentiment in the last meeting as well. Councillor Laura Williams. Laura.
Thank you. I've got 2 questions. One is around feedback and then one is around the actual survey itself. I believe it was covered in the last meeting on this item, but will there be any more consultation from the police at this stage, including local ward PCSOs? And then my second question around the survey is there any way we could add a question about park usage, of gathering that data while we're doing it, of how do our residents actually use the park? And obviously it's going to build a bigger picture of, if they are using it outside the hours, are they dog walkers, do they use it to cut through to go to school, etc. So I just thought it was an opportunity to just gather a little bit more data about who uses our parks at what times. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Williams. Yeah, certainly we can certainly include another question on park usage, and that's that 4-week period now, in terms of once if this gets passed to go to consultation by cabinet, between then and us actually going out, so sorry, yeah, Chad, picking back up on your point of view, it'd probably be even further than 4 weeks when you actually think about it. Yeah, we can look at that, and we work with Anita and Sylvia, and we'll get something in there on park usage. In terms of the police consultation, we continue to consult with the police and engage with them. We do, on a regular basis anyway, just because of the operations that we deliver. We'll probably go back as well to the Community Safety Partnership Group meeting, just to inform them that it is up for consultation and if they have got any feedback. But the feedback we've had from them is that apart from Victoria Gardens, there's been no comment on any of the parks.
That's brilliant, thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Just a couple more things from me, really, I suppose, on this. Coming back to the questionnaire point, I think obviously Laura's question is very relevant there, just to add a little bit more of a flavour of how people are using the parks. I think that's just good for us to know. But in terms of the specific questions we've asked about people using the parks at night or feeling safe, there's maybe an opportunity to expand that a little bit about, well, what could we do to make people feel safer in the parks at night? And you probably know where I'm coming at with this one, because I've mentioned lighting several times, and it brings us back to this risk assessment point in the report as well. I'm assuming that's going to come back when the final decision is made in terms of what our liabilities are around leaving the parks unlocked at night and what measures we might need to consider taking. My view is that, if we are going to leave the parks unlocked at night, we should consider, where necessary, installing some lighting, and particularly parks that are used as a cut through. And so I've got one in my ward, Vivian Park, people can walk through it with the dogs, run through it. You know, I imagine Tollgate, people will cut through it to get to school. And in those instances, maybe we should be considering that. And I just wondering if that's something we're going to look at and maybe cost step and look at the feasibility of as part of this process. It'll particularly be, I think, a more positive message to residents if we're saying, well, actually, look, we're allowing these parks to be open and used into the evening, and we're also going to facilitate that to be safe and welcoming and accessible as well. Notwithstanding, I think we all know the pressures around street lighting and everything else. We've discussed it a lot in this chamber and in this committee, but I think it's something worth giving some serious consideration to if we do want people to use them in the evening.
Thanks, I think I think you hit the nail on the head that, you know, with in terms of the budget impacts associated with that. I think that probably forms one of the measures I was talking about earlier, you know, in terms of individual parks. If there are issues that arise, it's not necessarily reverting to let's lock the gates. Let's look to see what we can actually do to deal with those issues. And obviously, you know, some of them might be associated with safety, some of them might be just associated with accessibility, and whatever those are, we can deal with them at the time. I think we've got a time period now between now and potentially going out for consultation. And if we do, that 8-week period doing the consultation, and then a time period for us to actually pull all that information that comes back together and bring back another, no, further, more detailed, informed report on what we would recommend as officers moving forward.
Thanks, James. I think the only thing I'd add to that, I suppose, is we've got an opportunity now to consider some of these items rather than necessarily leave the parks open, wait for some feedback and some complaints, and then look at mitigation, which, you know, will drag on a fair bit. I think we know what the benefits and downsides would be for lighting, for example. The only downside really is cost. There's some biodiversity considerations to take into account as well around design, but we know that will be a big benefit to residents. So it's taking the time, from my point of view, to consider those matters now while we're looking at this, and then I think we're at a head start then to say, okay, if there's funding available, we can tackle these problems, or we can make these particular parks more accessible. I think, you know, some of the parks they're kind of cul-de-sac locations, aren't they? They're not necessarily, you know, they're not thoroughfares, and there's maybe less of a case there. But that's probably my view on that one. I'm just going to see if any other members have any questions before we move on from this. Any other questions from members? I can't see any there. Did you have anything else to add, James, before we go to the recommendations?
No, nothing else. Just obviously, like I said, that we'll be bringing a further report, probably going to autumn, winter, then forward for a decision on when to, on recommendations, whether we take this forward as a permanent measure to not lock the parks going forward to pedestrians overnight. And within there'll be the detail.
Councillor Hurley.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Sean, only coming in because I think biodiversity is still sort of partly under my portfolio. So I think just to explain to members that the biodiversity issues may be down to backtracking and the impact on the bat flight paths and things as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. That's what I had in mind there. And I mean, there's products and solutions, isn't there, to mitigate that if we wish to go down that route. Okay, so members, I'm just going to draw your attention now to page 102 of the agenda pack, where the recommendations are listed. Could I have a pause and a seconder, please?
Yeah, happy to Chair.
I'll second.
Thanks, Tim and Laura. We're a bit slow today. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it that this report and recommendation is approved.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, this report has been approved.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Okay, so we have no items under Part 5 of today's meeting from the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme or Performance Monitoring Reports, and item 5, sorry, and no urgent items either today. Members will also note there's no Forward Work Programme item on the committee papers today, because this is the last meeting of the Environment Committee as it currently stands. Sorry.
If it was okay with you, could I like to mention something under item 6?
Yeah, go ahead.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
just I know that there's potential changes coming with the AGM, and obviously the waste strategy has been under the guidance of the cabinet member, Councillor Scott Jones, and this scrutiny committee, who've spent a lot of attention to the waste strategy and been very diligent in its in supporting the strategy and making it right. It's on behalf of myself, Chris Roberts, the service manager, and Mike Jones, the active waste manager. It's my pleasure this morning to advise you that we have achieved the 70% performance target. We finished the figure on Friday, so 71.4%, subject to the usual validation by Natural Resources Wales. Just so we've certainly been through a lot of changes over the last 21 years since I've been leading the service, and we've gone from sort of under 10% to 70%. It's been a massive change, massive. The residents have all pulled in as well, and we've had a bit of a revolution. I think we all thought that when I think Andy Rees, who's now at Welsh Government, when he set all the targets leading up to the 70% 20 odd years ago, I think we all thought he was mad, and we wondered how we would ever get there, but we've got there, and I'm sure there's still improvements to come. Now, I'm sure you'll get a formal performance report in due course, but with the changes, I thought it would be nice for this scrutiny committee, having been so involved in the strategy, to hear where we are.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. I think that is very good news, and members definitely welcome that progress. I think we debated over many hours, didn't we, the many different ways to achieve that target. A few smiles in the room here from the cabinet member and others. Yeah, and just the last thing I wanted to say before we go into the private session was I did want to thank members and officers for their work over the last few years on this particular committee. It's had a very big remit. We've covered a lot of issues, not just waste, of course. We've covered parking. We've looked at the home to school transport as well as a joint committee. There's been quite a few big ticket items, as well as lots of the regeneration proposals, active travel, Neath Transport Hub. It's been really busy over the last few years. After the AGM, of course, there'll then be two committees effectively covering this committee's work. And I suppose we'll have to wait and see at the AGM who the chairs, cabinet members and members of committee will be. And I just want to reiterate my thanks to everybody for that work.
And if I could just to finish on the waste, but there's been so much change. I just really need to thank all the recycling and refuse crews as well. They've been part of the revolution. They've adapted and changed so much over the last 20 years. We've had new vehicles, new methods of collecting, all sorts of changes. We have job evaluation along the way and so many other things. And I think I can only commend their efforts over the last 20 years to get us where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Appreciate that. Okay, members. So I'm now going to take us to item 8, which is access to meetings. So we now need to go into private session to look at the last two items on our agenda. So members, I just need to confirm if you're in agreement to move into private session. I'm happy to propose that. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Robwood seconding. Thank you. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary by raising your hands, I will assume you're in favour of moving in to private session.
I see no indications of the contrary, Chair. Therefore, we're okay to move into private session.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Can you just confirm to me when the recording is stopped? And